21st Century Entrepreneurship with Martin Piskarik.
Well, Martin, as you know, I spent 33 months in a federal prison for a crime I didn't knowingly commit. Why? Because I had blind spots. So let's talk about blind spots today. So let me give you a little backdrop then, Martin, to give you an idea of the context, which is really important when it comes to dealing with blind spots, right? Going back in time, I was fortunate and blessed to own the 13th largest Century 21 real estate franchise in North America, and in my youth, and it was a great opportunity. And then one thing led to another. I was offered and asked by the Century 21 corporate folks to give a presentation to a number of other real estate brokers in the Phoenix area. After giving that presentation, apparently I must have done something right, because the Century 21 corporate said, "Hey, can you do that around the country?" And so long story short, I ended up selling my real estate company eventually and starting a seminar company, focusing on Century 21 and then eventually all the different brands, and traveled all over the US, speaking to a lot of the different boards of realtors and different real estate brands. Well, that was a lot of fun, and grew that business fairly quickly. And it was all very organic because I had an opportunity with an open door, right? And I was at least paying attention enough to step into that opportunity. Then I was really on top of my game, and I was approached, again, very long story short here, but I was approached by a publicly held company called homeseekers.com, and they were already in the real estate space. They had a software. They heard about my company. They wanted to buy my company, and I ended up selling the company, became a paper millionaire for a brief moment. Paper and brief were the key words there, Martin. They gave me a lot of stock. They gave me some cash. They gave me some options and a president role in their company. But because I was an insider, I had to hold those stocks for 2 years. They were restricted. I couldn't sell them. So I learned how to do what's called margin the stock portfolio. And for those who don't know what that means, I was able to borrow from the stock house, from Merrill Lynch. I was able to borrow money against the value of my rising portfolio. And of course, many will remember the dot-com bubble bursting, and right in early 90. And in that point, when the bubble burst, 99, I believe it was. When the bubble burst, I ended up losing pretty much everything because I had margined my portfolio, and Merrill Lynch started selling my stocks to get their money back. And as my memory is fading, it dawns on me that was early 2000. Actually, I had those dates wrong. What then happened is I had just gained everything I'd worked for as an entrepreneur. Like, I was on top of the world, sold my company, wealth, and then lost it because of stupid financial decisions. And then a buddy of mine approached me and said, "Hey, I've got an opportunity that could actually set you back on your feet." So I'm all ears, right? And he tells me about a company that he had invested in and that was getting ready to go public on the stock market. And he said, I don't know, Kevin, if I can promise you anything." He said, "But I can at least make a phone call. If you're interested, I might be able to get you in on the friends and family round that just recently closed, because I'm a friend with the treasurer." Now, Martin, I had learned just enough stupidity, having gone through the dot-com craziness, to know that friends and family round and pre-IPO were pretty exciting. So I was feeling like I was in on the ground floor of a next big opportunity for me. And so I ended up meeting with the treasurer, asked a lot of really smart questions, apparently not smart enough, but I asked enough questions. And then I became an investor in this company. Months later, flash forward, I received a phone call from the CEO of the company, had heard about my biz dev background, and he offered me a consulting opportunity. It was supposed to be 30 days to help him transition the private company to the new public company, and in one of the roles that they needed. Well, that 30 days turned into 15 months of working as a contractor for him, and I never once saw prison coming. But now it turns out, in hindsight, according to the FBI agents that I spoke to, he was running the largest stock fraud in the history of the state of Washington. Seven years he was building this supposed business. He had a bricks and mortar pilot. He had a real business operational. I visited before I invested, but he was selling a pipe dream, basically. He had a beautiful prospectus. He had a model business, but he was selling everybody on the idea that he was going to go public and taking people's money as an investment. And so I came in at the last year of that 7-year run. He took over $93 million from more than 5,000 investors in this stock fraud. I started out earlier saying that I spent 33 months in a federal prison for a crime I didn't knowingly commit. I want to clarify right now, I was guilty. I just didn't know in the context of the moment that I was helping him further a crime. And that's a really key point with blind spots, is context matters. And in the context of the moments in all of our lives, especially as entrepreneurs, because we're running fast and furious, usually wearing multiple hats, and oftentimes running against deadlines, context is king, because in those moments, we don't always take a moment to step back and evaluate the big picture. We're caught up in the minutia of the moment. And in the craziness of that 15 months, always thinking we're getting ready to go public. By the way, side note, he was giving away stock to all of his employees like it was monopoly money. And of course, in hindsight, it was monopoly money. But we all thought we were going to be rich because he was kept giving us stock in this publicly, or this IPO, this supposed IPO. And so that kind of also brought a little greed into this blind spot dilemma. All right. And in context, we all thought, we being, there's 34 employees, and I worked very closely with about 6 or 7 of them. And we all thought the company was going public. We thought the guy was a good guy doing good things, when in fact he was just a con artist, really, when it came right down to it. So when it comes to blind spots in this idea of context, before we make major decisions, frankly, any decisions, but certainly major decisions, you want to really take a step back and you want to ask some really hard questions. You think you know what you know, but you have to take a step back and you got to put yourself in a framework of, what don't I know? What else could be going on here? What other facts am I missing? What other potentials could I be missing? Now, this is hard to do in a vacuum of a person by themselves. So surround yourself with other people who are not afraid to tell you the truth, who can give you a very different perspective, and then listen to that perspective, and then make decisions based on a lot of different perspectives in addition to the facts that you've already researched. So putting a sort of a capstone on that part of my journey, Martin, I ended up spending that 33 months in the federal prison, and it gave me an opportunity to do what I had secretly always wanted to do but never did. And I venture to say this is a heart cry for most entrepreneurs and certainly CEOs and executives of large organizations, which is be able to take a step away from the minutia, what many people like to refer to as the rat race, but take a step away from the minutia, so that almost a retreat, right? To where you can just decompress, ask a lot of really insightful questions, really understand if you're truly self-aware or if you just think you are. And the reason I say that is because Tasha Eurich, she wrote a book called Insights, and she's a professor in Colorado. And one of the things that came out of her research is this: 90 to 95% of us believe we're self-aware. I did, but only after hindsight, I realized the rest of her research, which is only 10 to 15% of us actually are self-aware. So there's a bit of self-deception in this that we as humans like to do. Like, we like to look in the proverbial mirror and think we're better than we really are. And I'm not saying we're bad, because my belief is we're all good people with good intentions who simply make bad choices. Um, and how do we get to where we make less bad choices is sort of the crux of this concept of blind spots. How do you mitigate these blind spots so I can make better choices and become a better human being and build stronger relationships, right? So here I am in a federal prison asking some really hard questions. Who am I? How did I end up here? Like, I'm a person of good character. At one point, I was even an ordained minister in my career for a brief time. And so I feel like I'm a good man of good character. How did I end up in a fraud situation and in prison, right? And again, this is my story. My story is really your story, right? We all have the same story. It's just the way it unfolds is different. Like, you don't all go to prison. I hope. I went to prison, and it was my retreat. Now, it was good for me. I wouldn't recommend it for anybody else. Go find a cabin for 6 months if you really want a nice one. But it took that opportunity to go from the top of my game, to have a retreat, have a setback, have an opportunity to really contemplate, to come out of that a different person, a better person, a person who thinks more clearly, who challenges the status quo in a different way. And like, one of my weak areas, Martin, was way too trusting. Like, I'm just a trusting person. I believe that people have good character until you prove otherwise. What came out of this experience is learning that it's really healthy to be skeptical. It's healthy to ask questions. So if you want to mitigate your blind spots, you lean in with what I like to say is curiosity. You have to ask a lot of questions. You can't just accept what you are perceiving to be truth, right? I call it a perception gap. It's the reason that 3 or 4 people might witness the same exact accident, but provide completely different accounts of what happened, or the same crime and provide different accounts of what took place, because we all perceive the world very differently than each other. And now we have to step back from those perceptions and go, wait a minute, what am I perceiving here? Is it true? Is it 100% accurate? How do I know it's true? That's where you start asking all the questions. That's where you really want to have a board of confidants around you. You want people that you know will tell you the truth, even if that truth isn't comfortable, even if that truth doesn't feel good, even if that truth isn't what you wanted to hear, because what you wanted to hear is this project, this company, this business opportunity is going to be great. But if you have 5 people telling you, I would think twice about that, I don't know if I would do that, you know, Don't push against them necessarily. Now, I'm not saying you might not be onto the next great thing and other people don't see it, but you have to ask a lot of questions and be open to the feedback. And that's another part of mitigating your blind spots, is having enough humility to know that you don't know what you don't know. Because frankly, it gets worse. Sometimes the things that you are confident that you know simply aren't true. And sometimes it takes hindsight to recognize those blind spots. This concept where you don't know what you don't know comes into play in one of what I believe, Martin, to be one of the biggest problems in organizations, even globally. And that is this: we tend to hire independent contributors and subject matter experts, right? And they're doing a great job for us. And so we stand back and we're like, oh boy, they're doing a great job. We should promote them and have them become a team lead or a supervisor, or then the manager, then the senior manager, then the director, right? I mean, this is how we move people through the organization. We forget, because as leaders, we have these blind spots. Just because they're great at their job doesn't mean they're great at leading people, right? And so here, now let's juxtapose this scenario. Let's just put ourselves into the mindset of the manager who just got promoted. So here, the manager thinks they're doing a great job because they're really good at what they do. And so now I can tell others how to do what I do really well and help them do really well. But we forget the aspects of this perception gap. My great strengths as an individual contributor or subject matter expert or just human being overall also have what I like to call potential blind spots. So this is why when I developed, my programs, and why organizations hire me to come in and teach or to help with the keynotes and the conferences, or coach their teams, or whatever the situation might be. It's about this perception gap. As a manager, I think I'm doing a great job, but what are the perceptions of your people? Do they think you're doing a great job? As a manager, I might think, well, I'm a hands-off manager because I like to give my people so much room where they can just be free to innovate and to do things the way that makes sense for them to do it. That might sound great and altruistic in many ways, but what's the perception of your people? Some of your people are thinking that you don't care. Some of your people are thinking you're the worst boss in the world because you just expect me to do things, and you don't even want to give me the time of day to show me how to do them right, or to give me parameters so that I know if I'm doing them right. So it's this perception gap of, I think I'm doing really well, my people think otherwise. And that's supported by Gallup, who has studied this idea of engagement for more than 80 years. What I loved in one of their books, It's the Manager, this is what they said. They said, in over 80 years of our research and findings, the most profound discovery we came up with is that 70% of engagement boils down to the manager. It's you, right? And why is that? It's not because you're not a good manager, and it's not because your people aren't good people. It's because of the perception gap that creates this wedge that creates disengagement and frustration, and people then decide to leave. So how do we get engagement higher? It's not by putting ping pong tables in the break rooms. I mean, or beer on tap anytime the employees want to drink beer in the break room. Those are all nice perks. I mean, some people like that thing. But if you really want people to stick around and be long-term employees and give you 100% of their energy, you have to get them engaged. And the way you do that is you have to train the manager how to understand people themselves and others, and how to understand that perception gap, which is self-perception versus others' perceptions, and then how to bridge that gap. That's exactly what we do, Martin. So, Martin, I think you remember earlier in the conversation, I talked about selling my real estate office and then getting into the seminar business, teaching real estate people, specifically about technology back then. What came out of going through this experience with the 33 months in prison, I began studying cognitive psychology because I needed to know what was going on in my head. Like, how did I not know my boss was committing a crime? What's the psychology behind that? And it fascinated me. And so that became a new passion, is not just helping me understand how I'm thinking and how I can think better and make better decisions. But then it became a passion of, now I've got to help the rest of the world. How can I help people, especially entrepreneurs and business people, make better decisions, right? So that became a passion to the point where a number of years after getting out of prison, I decided to go back into the speaking and training arena. And so I've been doing that now for the last decade and making great headway. But now, as you might see, if you could see my face, I'm aging. I'm getting to that point where it's like, now I'm thinking about the golf course more and more, right? And just spending more time with my family. And now my grandkids, my daughter has or she has two kids, my grandkids. She just told me she's going to have twins. So I'm going to have 4 grandchildren coming up really quick. So that's really cool. So how do I transition, Martin, from my passion of helping leaders develop great organizations and great teams with excellent ROI because of high engagement, to transitioning into wanting to spend more time with family? And the way I've done that is I've developed both a blind spot assessment as well as a program where coaches and trainers and even HR departments and hiring managers use my assessment so that they can actually better understand the people that they're hiring, making sure that they have the right people in the right role. And then the coaches and trainers, whether they're external or internal to the organization, they use the blind spot assessment for their leadership development programs, especially for that middle management level where people are transitioning from independent contributor to now getting into leadership roles, right? So what I realize is I can take me and my passion and package it so that I can license that information to others so that they can now continue the transformation journey internally within their organizations. And so that's what gets me excited and gets me up out of bed in the morning. The most exciting for me recently was bringing on the American Board of Radiology. It's a huge association. And what's really cool about that is that the two clients who called me up, they said, Kevin, we sat in a training program with one of your certified licensed trainers. We love your blind spot assessment. Can we use that for our internal leadership training program? And my answer, of course, was yes. That's the point. Well, we license that technology and IP so others can benefit from the technology and from the IP. And so that's kind of where I'm heading. And again, I want to spend more time with my grandkids, my family, my wife. It's just, that's what passion is. In fact, you've heard it said, right, Martin? If you love what you do, you won't work a day in your life. And that's how I feel. If you are interested in learning more, how do I get the opportunity to use your technology, your IP, your assessments, your training curriculum? How can I use that in my organization, or as a trainer or a coach or a professional speaker? How can I use your information in what I do to help people become a better version of themselves? That's a great question. And to get those answers, you can just look me up at blindspotassessments.com. That again is blindspotassessments.com. And there, take a look at what you have available there. If you'd like to reach out directly to me, I'm happy to get your email. So just send me an email, kevin@blindspots.com. Don't worry, I'm not worried about the spam filter. It'll take care of that self. But really, I love to build relationships. So reach out, kevin@blindspots.com. I'll send you a complimentary assessment. You can try it for yourself. Most of the time, people try it for themselves and they're like, hey, can I have my friends or my colleagues or my boss wants to try it too? I'll set you up with a free trial of our software. And you can actually use that with unlimited use for 14 days and send it to everybody you know, get their feedback. And I can promise you this, after you get their feedback and you've experienced it, you're going to ask the next best question. Love to hear, what's the fee? How can I use this? Well, let's talk.
21st Century Entrepreneurship with Martin Piskarik.
Imagine a space where triumphs, trials, and tales of entrepreneurship come alive. Welcome to the 21st Century Entrepreneurship Podcast, a gold awarded journey hosted by Martin Piskarik, connecting with listeners in 95 countries and ranking in the top 0.5% of all podcasts. Join our exclusive community, elevate your perspective, and embark on the path to success.